Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. And today we have a review of episode 3 of Dr. Stone, Weapons of Science. And here we are back for another round of rebuilding civilization, and this week was such an incredibly chilled episode, I felt, which is weird, especially considering all the tension that was generated early on, but this is why I love Dr. Stone, because this series has such a different focus to a traditional shonen. At its core, it's all about science and exploration, which makes it really easy to just sit down to and be swept up in whatever journey or discovery the characters are working on. For example, my favorite part of this week's episode was probably the whole section where Senku, Taiju, and Yuzurihira were just traveling, and seeing what they run into, like the big Buddha, or how they logistically managed to pass obstacles with Taiju pulling the raft thing, and the general day-to-day needs of simple survival. And I also think that this works a lot better in the anime than it did in the manga, which, don't get me wrong, it was still nice and chill in the manga, but sometimes that can be problematic for me because reading manga is a bit more of an active experience. Your eyes are constantly moving from panel to panel of various sizes, from text to text, which could be anywhere, and your imagination is invoked for voices, sound effects, or any perception of color or anything like that, and it's great fun, but for sections like this, it really is nice to just have the anime take care of everything so that you can just lie back and enjoy the journey. And one of the characters on said journey was our newest addition, Yuzurihira. Now, we'd already gotten a bit of a sense of her from the first episode, but this week provided a much better taste of what she'll have to offer going forward, and I'm pretty satisfied with it, I guess. Her voice is absolutely lovely, angelic even, but when it comes to Yuzurihira, I have deeper problems with her as a character. And that's because Dr. Stone is a series that from time to time can get a bit tropey with certain characters, and that's very much what Yuzurihira feels like to me. I like her design, I now like her voice, I just wish she wasn't such a classically passive female presence. It's not a huge issue because this series can get away with little flaws like that just based on its actual core focus. And what I will say for Yuzurihira as a character really is that she is not in any way annoying, which is often the case for the passive female presence in anime and manga. As we see in this episode, she is quick to get on board with any sort of shenaniganry to do with Senku and Taiju. She's not overly serious, and in fact she pulls some great comic faces from time to time. I just wish she had a bit more depth to her, and you know what, going forward that may become a common criticism I have for other characters, but once again a series like this can get away with it, whereas it would be a crippling detriment to others. So as a result, I'm going to say that the anime has pulled off Yuzurihira more or less as well as they could have, and I am looking forward to seeing more of her in the animated medium. But a character who continues to grow on me as a result of his adaptation is most certainly Taiju. In this world of chill that I claim to love so much, he is a much needed burst of energy from time to time that breaks it all up a bit. I mean, think of everyone else we have so far. We've got Senku, the cool genius, Yuzurihira, the softly spoken, and Tsukasa, who despite being a vicious murderer, is wildly calm and collected. So at the moment, Taiju fills a very important role of being a dumb, loud idiot, and it's something that I greatly appreciate being done so well in the adaptation. But there is a lot more to him than that, and we get a taste of his true character here with his conflict against Tsukasa. And I have to say, in the manga, Taiju is not a character who really held my interest at all until this moment, where he declares that he refuses to hit people and that Tsukasa can beat him up as much as he wants in exchange for not destroying the stone folk. It's such a wonderfully endearing idiot sort of thing to say that I could not help but love him from that moment on, and the anime has made me revisit this point of conversion all over again, and as per everything else I've mentioned so far, it was handled really well. Speaking of that conflict with Tsukasa though, the anime certainly stepped up this week in terms of action. A major criticism that I had for last week's episode was that Tsukasa's action sequences felt, rather unfortunately, pretty weak, due to animation techniques like throwing a punch and then immediately cutting to the results, thus lessening the overall impact. However, during this episode there was one fantastically animated moment of Tsukasa grabbing the shot that Senku fired from his crossbow and going on to strike Taiju. I love that I could really feel Tsukasa's momentum from the shot of his foot pivoting all the way through the sequence. The illusion was sold pretty damn well. Not phenomenally compared to more action-based series, but it certainly got the job done for Dr. Stone, and it gives me some decent hope for future events. Now, in terms of action, we had one pretty big goal flag this week, being the creation of firearms. And this also happens to be the primary difference between the anime and the manga for this episode. Specifically, when Senku chooses to reveal that they're searching for gunpowder. In the manga, Senku pretty blatantly states that they need to make gunpowder as soon as Tsukasa leaves their camp, which works quite well in the context of the chapter because that's what it ends on, and it's a very exciting note. But the decision to move this revelation in the anime was certainly the correct course of action because it gave this episode a similar effect that the manga originally had. And I don't think you miss a lot from not knowing that they're adventuring for gunpowder until much later, because you still have that motivation to flee because there is that need to separate themselves from Tsukasa, so it was a nice and probably necessary change for dramatic purposes. Something else I think this episode nailed was the slew of comic faces that appeared, and this was something that I was a bit afraid of after watching the first episode because there were comic faces in the manga that were removed, specifically of Senku, and it had me worried because I thought they might be trying to to portray him as a much more serious character than he actually is, but this week has put all of that to rest, as the series really is starting to properly embrace its comic layers. Also, to do with layers, it's a bad transition, but here we are, music! Once again, I am finding that the music of this series is superb, and the track that specifically stood out to me here was the one that played during the conflict with Tsukasa. It was incredibly effective at building tension, and look, I'm pathetic with music, so I'm not sure how to properly put this into words, but it also felt distinctly, tribal? It's probably not the right word at all, but it was very effective in evoking a primitive atmosphere, so well done there. Sadly, in terms of music, the ending theme, it still hasn't grown on me whatsoever, and I still really hate the visuals that take place in the real world with the stupid filter, and so I'm probably going to be skipping it from here on out. The opening, however, is the exact opposite. I love the energy it brings, and I've been listening to the full version periodically for a couple of days now, and I am still loving it. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that this is pretty much the end of Volume 1, which is awesome. It took just 3 episodes to blast through it at a very decent pace, and Volume 2 is where things really start to kick into gear, so I am very excited for the next few weeks, and I hope that you are as well. But that pretty much does it for episode 3 of Dr. Stone. If you enjoyed this video and the content this channel produces in general, then please do consider donating to the New World Review Patreon, because the support of all of you amazing people is what continues to make this channel possible. And if Patreon isn't quite your style, then please do leave this video a like, share, or subscribe, because it also helps support this channel an incredible amount. And if you'd like to join the fun at any time, then please do head over to my Discord server, where a wide array of shenaniganry takes place on a daily basis. And finally, please do comment with your thoughts on the episode. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.